Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast, the podcast where two ladies play games, shout profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome once again, or welcome for the first time, to the Wheel of Crime podcast. My name is Jenn.
Welcome, and it is me, Emily, and yes, we are back for another week of joy,
Of podcasting.
of storytelling.
Of
we do
cresting
that.
your ears
It's not always
with our
necessarily
voices.
joyful, but we do that.
Yes.
Yes.
We're cresting the ears.
So, Jen, what have you been up to this last week? That would be a fun thing that our listeners might be like, "Oh my god, I did that this weekend too."
I don't know about that, but I have some major blisters on my hands. I don't know if you can see that.
Whoa.
From lifting
Yeah.
today. Like, ow. Ouchie.
See, it's interesting because a lot of people feel the type of way about like lifting gloves at the gym. I don't care if they look dorky. I kind of prefer looking dorky over having hand blisters.
Well, I use straps and chalk for like my grip because my grip strength isn't the best or whatever. I don't
It's getting
know.
there. Hey, it's getting there.
It's a work in progress. But like, because that's definitely my limiting factor is my grip strength. Like I can physically lift the weight. It's just like my palms get tired.
Yeah,
and,
and then they give
hurt.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. So that's really fun. My hands really freaking hurt. We clap in to start these episodes, and when I clapped, I was like, "Ooh,
I did not
ouchie."
even think about that. Yeah, no, my hands are thankfully in decent condition, but I think that's just a side effect of like working desk. Usually, it's just that's how it goes. I guess I'm a brother. I got soft hands. You know.
Well, usually I'm a soft hand girl because I too sit at a desk and just clickety clack all
Yeah,
day.
you're really cool now. That's the biggest difference.
The fucked up right now. Yeah, I need to get some like working hands lotion or some shit.
Oh my god! Yeah, you gotta hit up whatever the blue collar oil field folks are using for their hands.
I don't think they're using
No,
anything.
I don't think they are either. What they should be using is what I should have said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you have a recommendation, send us an email. And let me know.
For real. Thankfully, yeah, for myself, I do some small calluses, but I think that's just from living. But thankfully, nothing too crazy from the gym. Just regular soreness, which I've just embraced as part of being alive and being somebody who's physically active, as depressing as that is. But whatever, it's just how it is. As far as like though, I am trying to think about what I've been up to this last week that isn't boring, because I think none of us are here to talk about that. It's not like Jen wants to hear about my stupid life. So,
correction, I always want to hear about your stupid life. Just the listeners probably don't.
I will contribute something of value. So, I feel like what I've been up to this last week is I've been trying to keep on top of like what's been coming out for new video games, because for whatever reason, I don't know, I don't totally understand how this happened. I don't know if this is like a shared experience for you, Jen. When I started being more physically active, it kind of was like, so it was a slow start for me. I didn't want to do anything like super crazy to begin with, just to kind of like warm into it, since I've spent so many years not being physically active. But now that I have, it's not like it's taken from my other hobbies, because really I just do, an hour in the morning, and then I'll go for a walk for an hour in the evening sometimes, which doesn't really feel like it adds up. But I don't really put a lot more of time into like some of my hobbies anymore. Like I've been trying to keep on top of video games that are coming out that I do want to play. But then at the same time, I'm like, but I have video games that I've bought like within the last like few months that I just am having a really hard time picking up for some reason.
I feel like that's pretty relatable. I don't know. I go through ebbs and flows of like actually being able to do my hobbies, because I feel like sometimes I'm just like, I'm too tired.
Yeah. So So that's something I'm trying to work at, because I do love the time. Like, for me, when I'm playing a video game, I like the problem-solving thing. I feel like it's engaging in that kind of way. Or it's like, you know, you get to build something or be creative. So I haven't been doing too much of that. But with that being said, because I am doing more of the other thing, audiobooks have just been crushing them out. And I know the last time when you and I talked about audiobooks, I had been reading Dungeon Crawler Carl. I still am, but I finished that book, and now I'm on to the next book in the series. So, I'm trying to think, as far as, like, my comments for anybody who's a listener of ours who might be reading the series. I just read Dungeon Crawler Carl. Oh, I can't remember. Hang on, I'm gonna pull it up because I don't want to give. I don't want to be making a mistake on what's it called. It's like book 5 or something. I read The Butcher's Masquerade. That's the one I just read, and I finished it. It was not my favorite of the series, but I think that's kind of just how it goes sometimes when you're reading book series, especially when there's so many things that taking place across multiple books. You're gonna have ones that maybe were like,
Don't hit.
So that one wasn't one of my favorites. It wasn't one of my worst ones either, though. But I did start the next one, which is called The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. And that one's been really interesting so far. For Jenn, because I know, Jenn, you're not going to probably read this series. It's not super up your alley. Basically, Carl and Donut, the two main characters, the man and his cat, who are stuck in this, like, little fantasy video game thing that's going on while the alien government is making problems for them. So this book I really like because it's got, like, an interesting take on, like, Pokemon, which is weird, like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon kind of. So, like, now they're in a different level of the dungeon, because that's what each of the books are. They're basically meant to represent, like, a couple levels or different levels of how far they're getting into this thing. And they've gotten it into a point where they have to, like, catch monsters and use them in playing cards against other people that they're in this dungeon with. Right. And I don't know. There's something that's really speaking. There's something about this really speaking to me. I'm like, oh, I can do this. This is my world. I know a thing or two about these.
Hell yeah. See, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum from you. I'm currently reading a memoir by, called Nobody's Girl, which is authored by, oh God, what's her name? Sorry, I need to look. It's, Virginia Dufresne, I believe.
I know, I have such a tough time remembering just random things about the books I'm reading. I'm like, I've put so much time into this, but I could not tell you a single thing about it besides these things.
Yes, it's by Virginia Dufresne, and she was one of the women who was trafficked by Epstein.
Woof. Okay. Yeah, we're in very different worlds right now.
Very different worlds.
But you know what? I like to think that's what adds our diversity in the podcast.
It's true. I feel like that does speak to our two different modes that we're in.
Totally. And then I it's been sad. I really have been wanting to sit down and read my silly smut book just because it does give just enough unhingedness that I feel like it would be soothing for my soul, but I just haven't really had good sitting time yet. But I feel like soon. You need a patio drink and your book. Yes.
And for the vibes to be high.
Yes, that really speaks to me. But with that, because I could actually talk about books forever, and I know that's what none of you are really here to listen to, I don't think. How about we get into our wheel of questions so that you could maybe discover what the heck it is I'm going to tell you about today?
Hell yeah, dude. Let's spin for the first one.
Have you ever had a... I'm going to just start that over. Have you ever had a moment where a stranger left a stronger impression on you than someone that you actually knew?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I feel like many times. There's been various times in my life where I'm out in public with somebody that, like, I know, and a stranger comes to interact with us, and I feel like the stranger has made more of an impact on the conversation or more of an impression than the person I'm with.
Okay, that's interesting. See, maybe that's more of an exposure thing then. I actually don't really feel like I've had that many strong impressions from strangers, but now that I'm thinking about it, you probably have to be in public for that to happen.
I think it's a symptom of city life.
Definitely. I will say though, I think more often than not that I am the stranger in other people's situations who's offering up my opinion than I am for it to happen the other way.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, that feels more right. So maybe that's why I'm like, I don't really know about that.
You haven't had that interaction because you are that interaction for other people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, let's move for our next question.
Do you think kindness is still considered kindness if it puts you at risk?
I guess it depends on who you're talking about being kind to. You can still be kind to others while being unkind to yourself.
I think it's more like at least how I interpreted my question when I put it in was, I think a lot of people when they're coming from the place of kindness are coming in with the belief that they are improving something. Would you still be kind to somebody if you knew, like, for definite, that because you were choosing to be kind, that there was going to be a retroactive action that would hurt you?
Me, no. Because I have pretty firm boundaries with people. But I'm also not a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Like, I could literally give less than two shits about that. My husband, on the other hand, does that all the fucking time. Puts himself in detriment to, like, please other people for no goddamn reason. So I don't personally understand that, but I know that people do it, which is insane.
Oh, yeah. See, I think for me, I definitely would have come across this point, I think, years ago. Probably more similar to your husband, where it's like, I can't help but be the person I am in certain situations. However, I would say that my opinion on this, is kindness kindness, or is kindness still a kindness if it's putting you at risk? I kind of think that just because something can be inherently good doesn't still mean that the situation calls for it. I think that there can be times that come up where maybe doing something that is kind, or what you perceive to be kind, can still in its own way retroactively be harmful, in which I think in that case that is where the risk is coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just think, like, there's obviously situations where it makes sense to put other people in front of you. There's lots of situations like that where you should, be selfless and help other people, even if it's not in your particular best interest. I'm all for that. What I'm against, I think, is doing that all of the time when you don't need to do that. Because I think no one else is going to be looking out for you the way that you're supposed to be. And you have to be selfish in this life in order to just be a person who can live and thrive and find your own success.
Oh, totally. And here's the thing, though. I feel like in a way that's kindness towards yourself. Like, does that make sense? Like, I feel like
100%.
In a way, I think that people expect kindness to be that in which it's like you mentioned, like self-serving, like you have to put yourself not down necessarily, but you may be putting yourself out in a way to be kind to somebody. And I think there's a lot to be said in that you can still be a kind person and a person who lives their life through kindness while still
without being a detriment to yourself.
But you need to have the perspective of the kindness needs to be towards yourself. You can't truly be a kind person if that kindness only extends to other people and not towards yourself, I think.
I also think boundaries and limits on things in general are good. I think people need more boundaries in life.
Absolutely. Because, it's like you said, it's pretty easy to get yourself into a situation where you're constantly, pouring out parts of your time and your energy for different things, but if you're not giving yourself that same time, then I don't know, it doesn't seem particularly productive to me.
It's true. It's if you give everything you have to everyone else, you have nothing left for yourself. And that, at the end of the day, is not only going to hurt you, but it hurts the people who are closest to you, right? Because you have nothing left to give for them either.
Yeah, and then the other thing, too, is sometimes you might be giving parts of yourself to another person who's just going to have to end up learning certain lessons at the end of the day anyways. So, you know?
Or doesn't give a shit that you're going through all of this extra energy to give them that, and they don't care or want it. Like, I think that's part of it, is sometimes the kindness is not wanted.
Yeah. And that's...
I don't know.
I think that makes sense, though.
I got big feelings about this, clearly.
I think it makes sense, though, because with this question, it's interesting enough because it's like you said, it brings into question, like, a lot of different types of perspectives, because I guess, like, if I was to, like, look at this question subjectively, I would say if it's putting you at risk, it no longer becomes kindness. The only way that it is still a kindness is if you are taking those steps to make sure that you are protected in your ability to provide kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a fair thing to say.
Agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And I stand
by that. All right, well, let's spin.
Yeah.
For our next question.
Let's do it. What would make you trust somebody you just met even if the situation felt strange?
I think it's a vibe, you know?
Yes.
I think you can catch a vibe from someone when things are weird about, like, what level you're both on, and you can kind of tell, okay, this person is also feeling really strange about this, that we're gonna, like, protect each other.
Like
I've had that when I'm out
like
at, like,
intuition.
the bar. Yeah, I've had that when I'm out, like, at a bar, and I'll see, like, a girl out, and I'm like, oh, okay, this situation is immediately weird. Like, we gotta get out of here.
See, when I wrote this question, it reminded me of a situation that I've been in before, which is actually super relatable to this, because I couldn't really put myself mentally there until I was like, oh my god, I've actually been in this situation before. And I think I've mentioned it on the podcast. I actually was in a grocery store, and this would have been during the pandemic. It was like the tail end of the pandemic, so you didn't have to wear masks anymore, but you were still supposed to be practicing social distancing. And I had gotten the worst sunburn of my life, Jen remembers, because it was insane, like genuinely insane. And
it is still the profile picture for Emily in my phone, so every time she calls me, that face shows up, and it's glorious.
50 different colors of red. The sunburn I had was, like I said, the craziest one I've had in my life. I could barely walk. So keep that in mind. It was so painful. I could not put on normal clothes. I was at this grocery store in genuinely just my underpants and a muumuu because I had to, like, just not have things touching my physical body, and, like, my husband's shoes I think I was wearing. I just really needed whatever it's called.
The less contact, the better.
Actually, though. And so the reason I was at the grocery store was because and it was, like, late, too. Like, just for context in this situation. It was late, and I was there because I was picking up after sun care, because I'd used up all of what I had, and I needed more. So,
fair.
I'm in this section, and there's almost nobody in the store, but pretty much immediately, like, after I'd gotten to the aftercare section, and I was looking to see what I wanted to buy, somebody had entered the store who was just acting very erratically, and they were yelling a lot. And out of nowhere, there was, like, a lady who, like, popped up right beside me. And she didn't say hardly anything to me. She was just kind of, like, standing close to me. But I could tell from, like you said, vibe and, like, kind of evaluating, like, how, like, what her body language was saying. I was like, cool. I trust that if there's weird shit going down over here, because it was kind of coming towards us, that we're kind of, like, aligned with whatever it is that we are going to be doing in this situation. And it was a weird thing, because it's like, it's kind of like you mentioned, it's like, it might not even be a conversation you were having out loud with a person, but you can kind of, there's a weird thing that happens where you're like, yep, this is what's happening, and this is what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's no better way to describe it. And you just know in those situations, you, like, lock eyes with that person and you're like, okay, I don't know who the fuck you are, but we got each other, dude.
Actually, though, I was like, I don't know how you think I'm gonna help you. I'm burnt to shit, but like,
protect me, please.
You're not. So maybe
protect me, sweet
so
child.
Maybe we can figure something out. No, we ended up. It was a funny. So I'll just finish this off in case anybody's like, well, what happened? So this person was acting erratic.
Yeah, I'm curious.
They were in there looking for ice cream, but I think they were inebriated in some type of way, and didn't quite know exactly where they were and what was going on. So they ended up being escorted out. But I ended up catching the lady who'd kind of like sided up to me as we were leaving, because like I said, this was still social distancing time. So, you know, like everybody was still kind of maintaining their distance, and then we ended up leaving close at the same time. So I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so crazy. Like it's a good thing that we were so close to each other. And she's like, yeah, she's like, I don't know what it was, but like I just, you know, because I guess she'd been between a few different people when she had decided to come into the aisle with me, and she was like, you know, you just kind of gave. To me, it felt like you would be able to handle whatever it is, and we could maybe figure something out. And I was like, I seem competent to strangers, even though I'm
hell yeah,
literally in pieces. So that's a win.
That is a win,
right?
You're winning more than I am this week because I got called middle-aged. So
I got called middle-aged too, so it's fine.
I'm just gonna cry now.
We can cry about it later, but we do have one more question.
Okay, let's spin.
Do you think that some people, places, or memories can feel unfinished? So...
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, it like just to kind of back up what that means in case you don't really like know the direction I'm taking with this. It's like... It's kind of like in your life, if you have relationships with people, or you meet somebody, or you go somewhere, and it's just kind of like, I feel like everybody gets the experience occasionally where it's like, you used to be friends with somebody.
Unfinished
something
business.
happened. What the fuck is going on with that? Maybe you go somewhere and you learn something about it, and nobody really knows what happened after that. Unfinished business. Yeah, exactly, like you said. So, for me, I was like, when I was like thinking about this question, I was like, yeah, but I feel like it's one of those things that people just kind of accept without really ever talking about it, where it's like I feel like there's such an emphasis that a lot of people have where it's like, oh no, like the story needs to finish, like depending on whatever it is, like a relationship with a person or whatever, or closure, like seeking closure. But I think that there's a certain point, I think, where it becomes a part of like adult life and acceptance that you're not always going to get closure for whatever that is.
It's true. I struggle with that personally. I am a person who really, really likes closure, and like I will sit awake at night thinking about things when I haven't gotten that. And I don't know, it's hard because there's just certain situations where no matter how strongly I feel about it or whatever way I feel, it doesn't matter because I can't force that person to like have closure with me, or I can't force, that place to have closure with me. And like, I really struggle with that. Totally. And I think there are definitely a few situations for my adult life where I'm like, it's taken me a long time to get over certain things because I never have gotten that true closure the way that I wish I could have.
Oh, totally. And it's interesting because it's like, not only is that a personal experience that I feel like myself, definitely, but like our listeners, you guys are probably also resonating on this because it's kind of like I said, this is a part of life that comes up and it's like, oh my gosh, like this is a thing that I just have to deal with, I guess. But it's also weird that it kind of extends beyond the personal life. Like there's even been stories that you've covered on the podcast where it's like, yep, and they never found her body and they never figured out who actually did it. And it's like these different things. And it's like, and in our minds, I think it's like, yeah, you always sit there with the hope that it will come. But how many stories have been out there where everybody involved is now dead? It's just a story in an archive and you never got to figure it out.
I know. Oh, it irritates the fuck out of me. I try not to cover those stories on here because they irritate me.
I do appreciate that.
But, sometimes they're really interesting and I gotta do it anyway. But still, it pisses me the fuck off.
Facts. So then, I guess, with all of those questions in mind, what do you think my story is for you today?
Two strangers who have unfinished business meet in the astral plane to fight it out or something.
You were at 30%. Now I'm giving you 25%.
What brought my marks down?
I'm grading you. Uh-oh.
Whatever. I'm still at a way higher score than you overall.
No, true.
We're going we're grading by the curve on this show, and I'm like A++, and Emily's at an F.
I am at an F. So this one with my questions, I specifically wanted to be very, very vague because I've covered. So what I'm covering for a story today is something that comes up a lot in stories that I have covered without me actually just addressing the phenomenon itself, we'll call it. Like, I've done stories related to this, but I've never actually addressed the actual thing that's happening. So,
right.
With that, do you want me to get into my little description here for you? And you can tell me if you've heard of this before, which I know you have, but I like asking anyways. Ha ha.
Hell yeah.
Ha ha ha.
Take it away, Em.
Well, my description, before I do my story, of course, is the vanishing hitchhiker, also known as a ghostly hitchhiker, disappearing hitchhiker, or a phantom hitchhiker, is an urban legend in which people traveling by vehicle meet with or are accompanied by a hitchhiker who subsequently vanishes without explanation, often from a moving vehicle. Now,
interesting.
Yes, and there have been two stories that I've covered before about, I think they were, there was a ghost that, like, does other things, but one of the things that she does is be a phantom hitchhiker, which I know I've covered on the podcast before. Maybe La Llorona, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe.
Yes, you've definitely covered her.
So I know this was like this is definitely, like I said, an aspect of a couple of ghost stories that I've done before, but I've never actually done the specifics of what the deal is with vanishing hitchhikers. So I guess here's a question. Have you ever seen something on the side of the road while you're driving? Like, I know this is outside of, like, my line of questioning, but this was a little bit too on the nose for me to include in, like, my wheel questions. Have you ever seen somebody or something on the road and then it just, like, seemingly disappeared from, like, right in front of you? Or you thought you saw a person and then you were like, oh, okay, that wasn't a person, I guess?
No, but that is a huge fear of mine. Like, I'm so afraid to see that. I'm like, that's way too spooky.
It's funny, because
for me.
Well, for me, I used to do a lot of driving for work, and I totally have seen both things that I thought were there and people on the side of the road that when I drove up closer, I'm like, oh, I guess I saw
where did it go?
Nothing there. But I like to blame it on the fact that I only just started wearing glasses in the last year. So maybe it's just my vision was failing and and I didn't know is what I'm telling myself, because the alternative is too scary.
Possible. It's very spooky.
Yes. Okay, so I do have my story prepared. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Take it away, Em.
Okay. So, today's episode, or at least my story on this episode, is about phantom hitchhikers, also called vanishing hitchhikers. This is one of those legends that almost everybody's heard of in some form, even if they don't know the name for it. Potentially also if you listen to our podcast, definitely. So that's that. The basic version kind of goes something like this. So someone is driving, usually at night, and they see a person on the side of the road. The person needs a ride, so the driver lets them in. The passenger seems normal at first. They might even give an address, ask to be taken somewhere, or sit quietly in the back seat. But then, at some point during the drive, the passenger will disappear. No doors will be open. They don't jump out. They are just suddenly, poof, gone from the vehicle. Then, usually, the driver tries to figure out who they were and finds out that the passenger had died earlier, often in a car accident or on the same road, and sometimes on the exact day that they picked them up years before.
Interesting.
So this is a ghost story, but it is also an urban legend. And what makes it interesting isn't that this is one single case, but it's a story pattern that shows up in a lot of different places and in a lot of different ways, but like I said, similar enough. So it'll be like a different road, a different ghost, but basically the same setup.
Right.
A vanishing hitchhiker story, if you hear one, usually has a few core things that kind of make up what makes it a vanishing hitchhiker story. The driver, there's going to be a stranger asking for a ride. Stranger gives some kind of destination or clue as to where they're going. They disappear in the middle of thin air, and then later the driver will find out that they've already been dead. In some versions, the hitchhiker leaves something behind, like a coat, a scarf, or a bag. And then the driver will later find out that item, or later finds that item on the person's grave, which is, in my opinion, a little bit rude. Because I'm like, okay, so you borrowed my coat, you haunted the car, and now you're making me go to a cemetery just to figure out that you're dead. You could have just came out with that to begin with.
You're dumping my nice jacket in the dirt. Great.
Yeah. And you could have just like...
Now there's bugs in it.
Yeah, and really just to tell me that you're dead. You could have just come... You could have just said that. We didn't have to do all this investigating.
We could have had open communication and just chatted about it. You were in my car. I was giving you a ride.
Yes, exactly.
You're welcome.
Exactly.
I'm grateful.
So then that like detail though of say like, for example, in this version of the story, which is an object being left behind, is important because it gives this story proof, and it also makes the driver and the person who's listening to the story feel as though there's a physical transaction that happened. Which is why a lot of these stories have become as popular as they are. The Phantom Hitchhiker legend works also because it uses a normal situation and makes it feel unsafe. Helping somebody on the side of the road is...
Well, okay. Hold on. I think hitchhiking in general feels unsafe already, so that's debatable.
So that's the thing. That's my opinion also. But then I found through my research that even today, because I wanted to figure out like kind of what's today's climate opinion on this type of stuff, apparently... It totally depends on where you are in the world, like culture, and whether or not you're a man or a woman. There are lots of people who are like, oh yeah, I pick up hitchhikers all the time. I've met some of the coolest people who've been hitchhikers. And I'm like, not where I live.
I would never.
Not where I live. That's a different thing.
As a woman? No, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. You're walking.
Right? So, helping somebody on the side of the road is already complicated, which I feel like... Yeah, like kind of like Jen and I just expressed, it's one of those things where it's like, there's so many things happening. Like, if we're looking at it as there are parts in the world where this is like a normal thing, maybe we would have a different opinion. I don't know. I don't live somewhere else. But like, I feel like
I only have my experience, and that's...
Exactly. And I feel like with our experience, or at least if I'm talking from my own perspective, it's complicated in the way that you are in a vehicle which is a closed environment with somebody that you don't really know. And not to say don't trust all people, but I think that there are a lot of different situations that put somebody in a position where they may be needing to hitchhike, and you don't necessarily understand or know what those motivations are going to be for them to get to their destination, or even why it is that they're wanting a ride from somebody. Like there's just enough things that are like unknown in that situation where I'm like, yeah.
For me, my mind immediately jumps to like not even just like the risks as the driver, but the risks as the passenger. Emily and I live near-ish to a place in Canada called the Highway of Tears, which a lot of young women have hitchhiked and been murdered and are missing because of that.
Exactly.
But it's in an area where they don't really have a choice.
I guess that brings about a question I didn't honestly think about before we started talking about this. If you were ever in a situation where you needed to hitchhike somewhere, would you?
It depends if I have, like, I would like to think no, because there are a lot of risks as a woman to do that, but you never know what situation you could find yourself in. You might not have a choice.
Exactly. Right?
Like, especially where we're talking about Highway of Tears, it's a rural area with a long stretch of highway, and especially in the winters, we get very brutal winters here in Canada. You're not walking there. No. Like, there's lots of situations in which you would have no other choice.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where it's like, that's again though, like what we were saying earlier, like as the driver you have these things, but then it's like, if you're somebody being put into this position, like it's a state of vulnerability. And I know that not everybody necessarily shares that opinion, but I don't know if that's necessarily even opinion based. I think if you're looking at it factually, any sort of interaction you're going to have with a person where you're both in a vehicle and you both don't know each other is going to be inherently a little bit of a vulnerable situation, depending, right?
For both
Yeah.
of you, for sure. Like, you don't know that other person, what they're capable of, what their intentions are. Like, there's so many factors, and you're in this metal box flying forward on the highway or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, there's a lot that could go
Oh,
wrong.
totally. So, on one hand, you want to be a decent person. Because, like, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation. So, like, when I was doing my notes, I was also thinking about this. I remember once I was driving down a road, and it was a country road, and I saw a really young girl with a skateboard who looked fucking exhausted. And I've never in my
Mm-hmm.
life pulled over and asked somebody if they need a ride. But this was one of those things where I was like, I feel like if you are a like this person would have been a preteen, like
Child.
a younger kid. I'm like, it's either going to be me who pulls over and says something, and if they don't want to take that up, that's fine. But for me, I'm like, it could also be an older man or somebody else they don't know, or somebody who is maybe not as trusting. And I was like, and I'd rather be in the situation of, I could either take the risk of kindness in this situation, not saying that a preteen can't be crazy and do crazy things, but I think there's also like a level of vulnerability there. So in that situation, I did pull over and I did ask them if they were okay and if they needed somebody, not necessarily a ride, but if there's anything that I could have done. It ended up being fine, but it's like, yeah, it's kind of like what we talked about earlier. You can be a decent person, but to there has to be a line somewhere or an extent.
I think everyone also has like a different level of like the risks they're willing to take in their
Mm-hmm.
life. Like, you have like a risk limit, and it's kind of knowing where that line is for yourself and like what you're willing to do and not to
Exactly.
do, you know? In that case, I too would probably, drive the child somewhere if they needed a
Yeah.
ride. But I'm sorry, a grown ass man, no, I'm not gonna do it. Like, I'm just not comfortable.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like what you said. It's a risk assessment. You don't really. I think it's pretty safe to say that if you see a child alone on the side of the road, that there's not that many great situations that could lead to them being there. Whereas, like, an adult person is kind of a little bit more independent in that aspect, where
Mm-hmm.
there's probably different things going on than what would cause for a child to be walking alone on a road somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So then, on the other hand, true crime has definitely ruined us all a little bit, and I think that stranger danger is definitely a bigger deal than it was once upon a time when hitchhiking was kind of a more prolific way for people to get around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like people of our parents' generation used to do that all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Like, I know my dad would pick up hitchhikers when he was driving places.
Yeah. And that uncertainty that comes with stranger danger is kind of what's also giving like this particular like type of story its power, I guess you could call it. So it also doesn't help that like usually when people are like seeing hitchhikers like this, it's always on roads that are more isolated. Like there's not very good visibility, either issues with streetlights or maybe there's not as many streetlights. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's just like other things coming into play. If you're the driver, you're already in a vehicle that's moving fast, visibility is poor, it's nighttime, you're probably tired. And for a lot of people, like if you're seeing something on the side of the road, it can be really easy to say like, yeah, I am tired and I am hallucinating, because half of you is kind of like also like I mentioned earlier hoping for that, because the alternative is like um there's something fucking spooky on the side of the road.
Yeah. I'm driving really fast away from
Yeah.
that.
So then, this particular legend. Okay, hang on. I just want to make sure I actually finished my spot of notes. Yeah. So this particular legend especially became popular after known folklorist Jan Harold Brunvand published a book called The Vanishing Hitchhiker in 1981. Brunvand's work helped bring the study of urban legends into mainstream attention. But this legend specifically, or like type of legend, was studied even before that. So in 1940s, folklorists Richard Beardsley and Rosalie Hankey collected 79 written accounts of vanishing hitchhiker stories from across the United States. They found that the details changed from place to place, but the structure always stayed the same. And that is one of the biggest clues that this specifically is folklore, because it doesn't mean that nobody ever has, or it doesn't mean that nobody has ever had a strange experience, but it does mean that this story has a format that people will recognize, repeat, and then retell it somewhere else.
Generally how folklore works. Yep.
So folklorists have grouped these stories into a few main types. So the first is something called the classic ghost passenger. And this is kind of like if you hear about a vanishing hitchhiker, the version that everybody thinks about. So
yeah,
a driver picks up a young woman. She gives an address. She disappears before they arrive. The driver goes to the address. People at address say, she died years ago. And then sometimes she dies in car accident. Sometimes she appears on the year of the anniversary of her death. And that's kind of like the big one where it's like, yep, that's it. That's the story.
I think that's like the one I've most commonly heard.
Mine too.
And like seen represented in the media.
Definitely. My second is one of my personal favorites, which is in this second version. The hitchhiker is usually an older woman. She gets into the car, gives a warning, and then disappears. So the warning might be about war, disaster, death, or a future tragedy. Which I just love the idea that there was like specifically a ghost, right? A ghost of an old woman who's had enough. And she sees...
And she's like, listen, I got a premonition and you have to listen.
And she sees you or whoever driving up the hill and she's like, that's a hot mess. I gotta do something about that.
She's like, listen, your life, disaster. About to get way worse, by the way.
It's coming. You needed to know this because...
you really need to know.
She's like, I had to know.
You really got to get it together.
So now you have to know. Yeah. And I just love that idea of like, she's just like, you know, had enough in the afterlife and she's like, okay.
We're going to figure this shit out
do it.
One way or another.
So then the third type, which is one very common in specifically American versions of this story, is a man meets a young woman at a dance or social event. He gives her a ride home. She may borrow his coat because she is cold. Later he goes to find her or retrieve the coat and discovers that she died years ago. In some versions, the coat he gave her is found on her grave. Wah! So
spooky.
Yeah, it's very dramatic. And it also kind of follows a very similar formula, though. There's a young woman at dance. She borrows something. She dead. Coats in cemetery.
She was never alive. She's been dead this whole time.
Mm-hmm. Then we have the fourth one, which is that not every vanishing hitchhiker is a ghost. In some versions, the hitchhiker turns out to be either a saint, a deity, a spirit, or a supernatural figure in disguise, which is also so interesting to me. I've never once considered that the oogity boogity thing on the side of the road might just be your local, like, saint trying to come in there and give you some advice.
Your local bagul.
Yeah. Or your local bagul. It's like, what was it? Like, because when I was making my notes, I was like, oh my gosh, Saint Anthony's finally trying to tell me what it is that I lost. All this time I've been like, where is it? And he's like, girl, I showed up and I've been trying to tell you. And I'm like, I don't think so, Saint Anthony.
Your left earring is in the trunk, girl.
I thought that was really funny. But then, so an example of like specifically this is actually a great one comes from Hawaiian folklore, where the goddess Pele is sometimes said to appear as a hitchhiker. And in these stories, how the driver treats her matters. In this version, it turns the story more into a moral test. To be careful how you treat strangers, because you may not really know who they are.
I think that follows the same, like, moral code as, like, don't disturb nature, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You, like, treat nature with respect, and nature will treat you with respect.
Exactly.
I think that comes up a lot.
It does. And although we think of this as kind of like a modern car-based legend, you know, like I shared that there's been some, like, folklore studies in the 80s and in the 90s. There were similar stories that had actually existed before cars were even a thing. An early example comes from Sweden in the year 1602. It was a great year. Jenna and I were there.
Yep. I'm still there mentally.
I'll always be in 1602.
Great
Memories.
year. Wonderful year. Really, I was at my prime then.
Really?
That was before I was middle-aged.
That, I was about to say, back in the day, before we were middle-aged. So, a Swedish priest named Joen, which I think is how you say, which is how I think you say that. It's Joen. Joen Petri Klint recorded a story about a priest and two farmers traveling home from a Candlemas market. A maid joins them on the journey. When they stop at an inn, she asks for something to drink, but each time the drink is brought, something strange appears. First malt, then acorns, then blood. She explains that these are signs of what the year will bring. Grain, fruit, war, and disease. Which...
Awesome.
Wicked.
Thanks, Joanne.
Yeah, thanks.
Get your bad vibes out of here.
So, then, after saying, this is what the year's going to bring, she just vanishes. Poof, gone. So, obviously, this isn't a hitchhiker story in the modern sense because there's no car, not really a roadside pickup, but it still follows the same structure, which is a mysterious traveler joins on a journey, delivers a strange messages, and then vanishes.
They go, ooh.
I kind of prefer
bye.
her way of doing it, though, versus... like the car thing. I kind of feel like if you're out on a walk and some lady's like, oh my god, I'm going there too, and then throws some acorns at you at the end, like I would prefer that over over picking somebody up and having them in my car.
Over someone dumping my favorite sweater in their dirty grave.
Yeah, they're like, this is mine now, I'm just gonna tuck it in. So, one of the best known American versions of this story is called Resurrection Mary from the Chicago area. The story is usually connected to Archer Avenue and Resurrection Cemetery in Justice, Illinois. In the legend, Mary is a young woman often described as blonde and dressed in white or formal clothing. Some versions say that she had been at a dance, others say that she died in a car accident or a hit and run. A driver picks her up, and they approach Resurrection Cemetery. She disappears. People have tried to connect the legend to a real person, but no clear identity has ever been proven. That is important because this is best treated as local folklore, kind of like we talked about earlier, and not as a confirmed historical case. But it is very strong, and Resurrection Mary has become one of the most famous road ghosts in the United States.
Good for her.
Right?
Making a name for herself.
Exactly. Another well-known version comes from Niles Canyon Road in California. This road has a legend about a ghostly woman in white, sometimes called the White Witch of Niles Canyon. One version says that a driver picked up a young...
Sick name.
One version says a driver picked up a young woman who asked to be taken toward South San Francisco. She later vanished from the car, and the driver checked the address that she had given. He learned that she had died in a car crash years earlier. The problem, though, is that the details are inconsistent. Different versions give different names, dates, and backstories. So this isn't really one of those cases where you can just be like, here is exactly what the ghost story is. It's kind of like more of a generalization. But...
yeah.
We can say that Niles Canyon Road has a real reputation, though, for danger and accidents, especially throughout history. So it kind of makes sense that the folklore has expanded to specifically, like, areas like this. I feel like that kind of makes sense on why that would have happened.
Checks out.
So then we're going to get into why it is that they are as common as they are. So there's a few reasons why there's so many iterations of this legend, which is... roads are considered to be very transitional spaces. You're kind of on your way to somewhere. You're between places, and a lot of people kind of... like, I think we've talked about this even to each other before, where because we live far away enough that there's a little bit of drive for us, it's like, I know I've said this. You get on the road and you just kind of mentally check out. Sometimes you're like, yep, this is what I'm doing right now. Enough time will pass, and then I can be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then you add that with driving at nighttime messes with perception, just objectively. So it's dark. People are typically more tired at nighttime. You're watching headlights coming in and people passing you. Sometimes there's bad weather. And also, road hypnosis can make people misread what they see. Have you ever experienced road hypnosis? Do you know what that is?
What is it?
Road hypnosis is a condition, like an actual condition, that happens when people are driving for long distances and there's not like a lot changing around them. Basically, your mind starts to get bored. And this is how a lot of accidents happen on highways, because you're driving at a specific speed in your one lane for a long period of time without like changing it. And if you're doing that, it actually is more hazardous, because you can enter into this state where the road is basically hypnotizing you, because there's just so much similar like imagery being fed into your brain consistently,
Right.
that if something does change suddenly, like say somebody pumps the brakes or like an animal jumps out in front of you, you're not in the same mental state that you were when you started driving.
I think I've been in that state before. I remember a few Father's Days ago, my parents went out camping and I decided to go out for the day just to, spend some time with my dad. I got there. He had gotten into an accident and like had to go to the hospital. So he was airlifted to like the nearest big city. Because the little rural one that he initially went to was like, holy fuck, you're a disaster.
Yeah.
And so anyways, there was like this long drive back to the city, and I was like, I had gotten routed on all the back roads instead of like the main highway in Alberta. And or not Alberta, in central Alberta, I suppose. But anyways, and I was like going, and then all of a sudden a moose popped out, and I literally have never been like more startled. And I was like, because I was just like, and like I nearly hit that fucker.
Yeah. And that's exactly how it happens a lot. So, like, it's interesting because I never realized that that would be like a cause or like one of the leading factors in like why it is that accidents happen on the highway. But it makes sense though, if there is a sudden change in pace and you've been for the last like 40 minutes driving and that's it, like it makes sense to me, right?
Especially, I find that especially on the back roads.
Yes.
Like even when I'm leaving your house, when I left your house in October and it was like dark, I was like, whoa, I need to get off these country roads. They're kind of wigging me out.
Right? Well, that's exactly it, right? And so that's one of the factors in these types of stories. So, and then thirdly, usually when people are telling these stories, they have a strong emotional hook, because the ghost is often somebody who died before they got to where they were going, which is like, if you're on the road, like, that's not really something you want to be thinking about to begin with anyways. So,
no, that's bad.
Right? And it's always an innocent story. It's not like these ghosts are like popping up and like trying to scare people. Like that's not really a big part of what these stories are about. It's usually that they're just trying to get home, which is creepy but like sad also. And these stories are
poor girl.
Yeah, but these stories are also really easy to localize, because I feel like it doesn't really matter where you live. There's always going to be a road somewhere around you where if you think to yourself, what's the most dangerous road to be on? It pops into your mind what road it is. Right?
Like where the most accidents have been.
Exactly.
You know?
Or if there's like a specific tragedy that like rocked the town, like you know what that road is. Then we're going to come at this with the skeptical point of view, because yep, that's what we do.
Hell yeah.
So there is obviously no strong evidence anywhere that Phantom Hitchhikers are real ghosts. This is more specific, I would say, folklore than it is like actual ghost story or like whatever. Like it crosses so many different areas, but it really truly to me is mostly just a folklore thing. Because a lot of these stories too, like when people are sharing them online about like who's had an experience, they're always like friend of a friend stories, or like I heard it from my mom, I heard it from my grandpa, I heard it from my college roommate, like stuff like this, right? And
a story that's been through a game of telephone.
Exactly. And then it's always like the details are different than where people are like, oh my god, I heard something similar, but it was this. You're right, like you said, game of telephone. And anytime that there is a supposed witness, it just really never works out, which doesn't really make this interesting as a legend, because I feel like legends usually have some like form of credibility to it, whereas like this makes it definitely more interesting as what I think we should consider it to be, which is folklore. So,
right,
because they follow like very specific like genre items. So like they explain to people usually danger, grief, in the form of a strange experience happening. So explanations as to like maybe some of the root of like why a lot of these stories pop up in the areas that they do, which we kind of already covered, but I'm just gonna like name them, is they're most likely urban legends that end up getting retold as true stories, which we know happens, local tragedies that then become ghost stories, fatigue or highway hypnosis where people think they see something that's not actually there, poor visibility, exaggerated over time, hoaxes, or people connecting unrelated events that happen after the fact to something that they had experienced while driving. Because human brains are really good at building stories, and I think we kind of all know that.
They're really good at tricking us into thinking things happen when they didn't.
Exactly. So, The Vanishing Hitchhiker is really a story about, like, uncertainty, which we've kind of covered before, which is what would bring you to help a stranger on the road? Would you help that stranger, or do you just keep driving? Do you even trust the things that you see at nighttime? Could this person have been real? If they were real, did you do the right thing? Was the story ever true to begin with? Does it matter if it's true or not, if people just keep telling it as if it is? So, this is kind of why it ends up being a perpetuation, because it's like... That's like a lot. That's a lot to take in, right? And people, like, there's more people alive today than there ever have been, and there's so many different situations that could be leading to whatever it is that has put you in that situation where you're now, you know, seeing somebody who is a hitchhiker and making those considerations. So then, whether or not you believe that these are, like, actual ghost stories or not, or if it's just folklore that ends up getting kind of retold and passed around, the Hitchhiker, or the Phantom Hitchhiker, is kind of one of the more enduring urban legends, you know? Because it's like, I feel like it's interesting, too, with how I tell stories on the podcast, because I get into my notes. There's so many things that have started in, like, the 1400s that are, like, modernized for today. Like, or for, like, example, this story, which is from the 1600s, and then modernized today. It kind of is just, like, a little weird cycle of repetition where we revisit these things a lot. So
I think it's part of human nature, right?
Definitely.
Like, I think death in general and afterlife have been topics of human curiosity for probably ever.
Oh yeah. And like a hot topic too, right? And it's the fear, right? Like I feel like like you mentioned, it's just part of the human condition of like fear of death.
Yeah.
So then it's like I'm trying to figure out where exactly I was in my notes. Yeah, but honestly though, I think that one of the reasons why, say, if this is still being told, doesn't even really have to do with the fact that there's now cars, if these kinds of stories were happening before cars. I think it has more to do with, like, what we just touched on, which is, like, a fear of death, a fear of the unknown, being somewhere that maybe you're not necessarily super comfortable with, not really knowing what's going on around you, not being able to trust strangers. And then it's like, okay, let's pretend for a minute that this ghost story, you know, is like a real thing. Then it's like, you never know, it could end up with you going up to somebody's house and being like, hey, did your dead daughter happen to approach me on the road and give me, you know, this thing? It's like, you know, like, it's just weird, right?
Yeah.
So then, yeah. Same story, different town, different passenger. Ta-da.
The end.
The end. That is my story for you today.
Hell yeah. Very interesting. I don't want to meet a Phantom Hitchhiker personally, but...
Me either.
If you have... You definitely have to write in and tell us about it.
For sure. Well, I was going to ask.
I think we got one Phantom Hitchhiker story on one of our last listener episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Did we not?
I feel like we did. That's why I wanted to talk about them. It's a weird thing where it's like, I've never talked about the folklore itself before, because I feel like at the time in the past I was like, well, there's enough different ones, and, you know, like there's always like little snippet stories. But they come up a lot. Like, and I feel like I've talked to people before, too, like, just in my own personal life, where it's been like, oh my god, I was driving out this one night, and I totally saw something crazy on the road. I've been the person driving out one night and seeing something crazy on the road, right? So it's like, it's just like, I don't know, it's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that so many people have those experiences.
Definitely. But we're running a little bit longer than I thought we would with this story today. So I'm just going to get into it. Thank you for listening to our episode. If you liked today's episode, please make sure to leave us a review on wherever you're listening to our podcast. We also have our website, which is www.wheelcrime.com. You can check us out on there. We have our email, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com. We have our Patreon, which is wheelofcrime@patreon. And we have our social media, which is on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and X. All at Wheel of Crime. And if you listened to today's episode and you were like, I can't believe you guys talk about Phantom Hitchhikers, or like, you know, the whole shebang.
Ghosts.
Yeah, the whole shebang I gave. Ghosts, saints, whatever. You can write in and you can tell us all about it. Did St. Anthony show up and tell you that you were dumb and you left your wallet at home? You can write in and tell us all about it.
Please do.
Yes.
But that's it. That's all. And we'll see you next week for another new episode. Okay, bye.
Bye.